Hello and welcome back to the Empty Podcast. I'm Anthony Corby, and today I will be discussing some of the past books that I've written, beginning with the first book, The Greensburg Dragons, and talking about the most recent book I wrote, which was not All In, and it was not Empty. It was another book that I released for a few days or maybe a week or so, but then deleted from Amazon, but I'll get into that in a second. I know this podcast was actually initially going to be about tour dates if you were keeping track, but I can't talk about tour dates. I don't have tour dates yet. I am hoping I'll be able to release them by the next podcast. Likelihood of that happening, though, 40%, maybe. Which is why you should definitely follow the Instagram account at EmptyByCorby for more updates. I'll probably have to release the tour dates there if I do wind up doing a tour, book signing, whatever you want to call it. So definitely follow the Instagram account. I'm hoping that I can release them the next podcast, but it might not happen. And if there is no book signing, then I won't even mention it next podcast. But if there's still stuff going on behind the scenes, then I will be sure to talk about that and where I'm at with the tour dates, like I am right now. But anyway, another bit of news: the book will be released December 1st. That is now a solid date. In the past, I've told you that there might be an off chance that the book gets released a day or two early. No, it will be December 1st in the morning. It probably, yeah. So as soon as you get up that morning, when you're getting up at 8 a.m. and you're checking your phone, buy the copy on Amazon, unless you're a friend of mine or unless you're coming to a book signing. Because if you're a friend of mine, you can just DM me and get it for $4. And if you're going to a book signing, you can get it at the book signing for however much the book company or independent bookstore charges. So, if I do a book signing. But anyway, I'm going to be talking about past books in this podcast. I'm going to start with the first book that I ever wrote. It was not an assignment. It was in 7th grade, and it's called The Greensburg Dragons. And I drew inspiration from it from authors like Mike Lupica and Dan Gutman, or not Dan Gutman, Tim Green, who I'd read a lot of their sports books, and I wanted to kind of make my own. It's about 60, 70 pages in length. And it's about two guys that get rejected from their school football team, one of which was part of a blowout the previous season. It's kind of like football culture that you'd expect from the South, where everybody's crazy about football there. They play the championship game at Heinz Field. Very unrealistic book, but nonetheless, I still was able to put my inspiration into words, I guess. And yeah, wrote this book in early 7th grade. I'm not going to give away the ending, but a lot of what happens in the book, I was kind of surprised. I was reading it the other day. It seemed like, I was a lot smarter than I thought I was in 7th grade. No one really actually paid attention to the book because I didn't really promote it in school. Like, I casually threw it in there one morning, the morning after I released it, but I never actually, promoted it in school. I think I gave a few copies to teachers, but I don't think that I, told some of the other kids to buy it, which it was funny because a lot of the kids at my elementary and, well, mostly elementary school loved to read my books. I would write these 12 to 20 page books, or 10 to 20 page books. Sometimes they were 10 pages, but rarely. I would write these little books, and I made a whole series, and people, for whatever reason, would want copies of them. And they're like these little books. And I became famous in my elementary school for that. Of course, there were it was a private school, so there were only 20 kids, or not even 15 kids in my whole class. But yeah, it was still pretty cool, I'll admit. that a lot of people liked my books. I guess some of them just kind of gave up in middle school, but I also never really promoted it. But it was funny. At the Collingswood Book Fair the next year, I think it was, I set up a table there and I got to share it with my favorite childhood author, Dan Gutman, who I mentioned before, but mistakenly mentioned him before. Um, he was my inspiration for just writing in general. So he went to this thing every year, and it was a really cool moment. I got to share it with him and tell him that he was my inspiration again and stuff like that, and say, well, look, this is a book inspired by you. And I actually wrote about something like that in Empty. There's an experience in there where you can see, I'm just going to say, somebody is inspired by something and get to see it in person. I'm not going to tell you where in the book, though, but I guess that kind of leaked into there a bit. I just realized that as I was talking then. But, yeah, it was a pretty cool moment. There's a picture of me and Dan Gutman and I can't believe I almost said that as an author. There's a picture of Dan Gutman and me, and I'm holding the book up next to him. And, yeah, it was a pretty cool moment. But then on to the next book I wrote, which was in the later stages of 10th grade, also not as an assignment. Basically, I was bored in study hall. I shouldn't have been because my grades were awful that year. That was the only year I really struggled in school. But I wrote a book, so I guess I got something out of it. Basically, what All In was about was sticking with the theme of sports. It was a baseball player who was the only good player on his baseball team, and he had to deal with a bunch of kids on his high school team that didn't really care too much about baseball. I don't remember how many games I said they won, but they didn't win many. And he kind of just wanted people to start caring about baseball at his school and start playing well because nobody cared about it. More people just cared about. I don't think I said this in the book, but more people cared about football. I'll be J.K. Rowling for a second and just make up the story as I go along. No, I'm kidding. But more people would care about the football team than the baseball team, which kind of stuck with the whole theme of being the underdog that I had talked about in the Greensburg Dragons. Also kind of inspired by Tim Green and Mike Lupica. But yeah, aside from that, this book was a little bit darker because it dealt with alcoholism. The kid's dad had passed away. Sometime, I forget when I said, I think it was 10th grade. The kid's father passed away, and his mom had become an alcoholic, so he was essentially living on his own and having to do things for himself for the next 2 years until eventually his mom. This is also kind of unrealistic. His mom gets taken away from him because she is an alcoholic. And that's just kind of me making a sense of freedom for somebody. I know not everybody can have that kind of same situation happen, but I wanted to show that freedom can happen. Yeah. I never really promoted the book. I talked before about, I never really told any of my friends when the Greensburg Dragons was released, or the the Greensburg Dragons, when that was released, I never really told anybody. It was actually funny, the other day I was talking to, or about a week or so ago, I was talking to a few friends when I went home from college for the weekend, and they said they had no idea that I'd even published any of these books. And then I realized that, oh shoot, I guess I never really did tell anybody about this. But like, they were kind of surprised at that. They never even realized that I was an author. Also, I probably could have promoted it more. That's why I'm doing a bit of making a bit more of an effort to promote this one. But yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of All In. Now, The most recent book I wrote was at the end of 11th grade. It was more for myself because I wanted to capture a Hollywood ending. It's called Junior. And in fact, when you look up Anthony Corby on Amazon, that'll probably come up at some point. And I wrote it in 2 to 3 days. My parents were in Europe for their 20th anniversary, so I stayed up a bit later than I probably should have to finish it. And it was basically just about my junior year of high school. I wrote it more because of the Hollywood ending that was associated with it. I still think that my junior year of high school was probably the best year of any school of my life because I'd gotten straight A's in all my classes in the second semester. I actually got a 4.0 GPA in my senior year, but I was able to be part of my school's TV program and be a big part of that. I was a bigger part of it in my senior year, but there were some problems with it that year. But I had a lot of, I guess, just fun experiences in my junior year I felt like writing about. And also, my junior year kind of stunk at certain points only because of the sports themes that were associated with it. So, I was a major LA Dodgers fan, and that November was when the Dodgers lost the World Series to the Houston Astros 4-3, or the Houston Asterix, as people are now calling them because of all the scandals that have erupted recently. And then a few months later, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and I was not an Eagles fan, so I had to watch everybody else be happy while I was still sad that the Dodgers lost the World Series. So that June, I kind of just had enough of it. I didn't want to be a Dodgers fan anymore, so I bandwagoned myself to a worse team in the Rays. And the Rays wound up playing the Astros, the Asterix, like 4 times at the end of the season or so. Or no, they played them in 2 series. They won 4 games out of the 7 times that they played them, which were 7 games that they played them. They played them in 2 separate series, so they technically won the season series against the Astros 4-3, and that was how my high school or my 11th grade ended, with my team coming back and getting revenge on the Astros. And I thought that was pretty cool. I was glad that I could at least rely on the Rays now, and I'm still a Rays fan today. But yeah, that's actually pretty much it. And I deleted it about a week later because I just wanted it for myself. I didn't want to share it with anybody. I might have actually deleted it. Well, I published it, and then I deleted it as soon as I got a copy of it. So there's one copy that exists, and it's, I don't even know where. I haven't even picked it up in a while. But I just wanted to preserve the memory. I read it about a few months ago. But yeah, I've written officially 2 books, but 3 technically. Well, now 4, with Empty coming out December 1st. So that's all for this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Empty podcast. Let's see how long this is, because I've just been staring at a Google Doc the whole time. 13 minutes and 45 seconds. I said I was going to make these shorter. That's not going to happen, and especially when I possibly continue making certain podcasts. Right now, I'm thinking that I'm just going to end the podcast with the next one. There might be one after the book is released at some point, just discussing the book. It might actually just be a video that I release on the channel, but we'll see. So anyway, that's it for this edition of the Empty Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Anthony Corby, author of the book Empty, and I hope to see you next Wednesday. Take care.